My name is Lucy Hammond, and I'm one of the firm's partners specialising in the charity and not-for-profit sector. Welcome to our short guide on the upcoming changes to revenue recognition as a result of SORP 2026 being introduced for periods commencing on or after the 1st of January 2026. Our series of short guides are designed to provide a high-level overview of some of the key areas of the financial statements that are impacted by SORP 2026. The changes made to the SORP being driven by changes made to the UK's accounting standard FRS 102. The revised SORP now sets out that there are two categories of income: income from exchange transactions and income from non-exchange transactions. And there are different recognition criteria between the two. Income from exchange transactions are goods or services supplied under contract with third parties. So in the case of the charity sector, this could be income from a local authority under a contractual arrangement in exchange for providing residential care services. Income from non-exchange transactions are where a charity will receive value without providing an equal value in exchange. So, for an example, a donation. In terms of accounting, exchange transactions are where charities will see the biggest change. The SORP includes the 5-step model from FRS 102. The steps are set out here on the screen. So step 1, identify the presence of a contract with a third party. Step 2, identify the performance obligations in the contract. Step 3, determine the transaction price. Step 4, allocate the transaction price to the performance obligations in the contract. And finally, step 5, recognise the income when or as the charity satisfies a performance obligation. One of the biggest challenges for charities will be determining if a transaction is an exchange transaction or a non-exchange transaction. There are some specific areas to think about, for example, membership subscriptions, income from royalties, and long-term contracts. And the SORP has a specific section on each of these. The key here will be determining when your charity is delivering a performance obligation. So, for example, with membership subscriptions, you will need to consider what you are providing in exchange for the membership. Is it access to your gardens or museum? Or, as part of someone's membership, do you put on an annual event in addition for them to attend? One of the points to remember when thinking about exchange transactions is that the contract would also be subject to contract law. Moving on to non-exchange transactions. These are when a charity receives value from a donor or grantor which is given freely and there is no equal value provided in exchange. There may be performance-related conditions or other terms limiting recognition, but in reality there is no significant change. The requirement to recognise income when entitlement, probable and measurement criteria have been met has been removed, and there has been a shift to having criteria relevant to the type of income. So there are separate sections in the new SORP for the following: grants received for capital expenditure, legacies, income from donated goods, facilities and services, and income from interest and dividends. Just a couple of key areas to pick out today. It is really important to remember that income with performance-related conditions can still be categorised as non-exchange transactions. And this is especially true when those performance-related conditions are more of an administrative nature. Moving on to legacies, there have been some clarifications in terms of recognition in this section of the SORP, but the key points remain in terms of recognising a legacy when it is probable. So, grant of probate has been made, there are sufficient assets in the estate, and whether or not there are any conditions and whether these have been met. Then you consider whether or not the legacy can be reliably measured. What has changed is that for Tier 2 and 3 charities, disclosure is required in the trustee's annual report where material legacies have been recognised but not yet received. This is a useful addition to the SORP as it will provide the user of the financial statements with a greater understanding of the cash flows of the charity. It should also be noted that some of the legacy content has been moved to Section 13 of the SORP, events after the reporting period. For legacy accounting, this period is particularly crucial as it can often provide the charity with the measurement information needed. What does this mean for my charity? Well, the first thing you need to do is determine whether your transactions are exchange or non-exchange transactions. If you have exchange transactions, you will need to go through the 5-step model. You may need to make some judgments, and these may form part of your accounting policies going forward if they are considered to be key judgments or estimates. For some charities with a number of grants and contracts, this is going to be a significant task. Finance teams will need to work with other areas of the charity to ensure that they have all the documentation required to review and conclude on each individual grant or contract and how it will be categorised. If you would like more detail on this subject or the other changes being introduced, if you're watching this recording before the 11th of March 2026, please do register for our live webinar, which will be held on that date and will provide more information on this topic. If you are watching this after the 11th of March, a recording of our live webinar can be found on our website. Or, of course, you can reach out to your usual Crest & Reeves contact. Thank you for watching.